Ready to dive into one of the most stylish, free, and experimental decades of the 20th century? Welcome to the channel. Today we're going on a colorful and unforgettable journey into the 1970s. A time of freedom, experimentation, mixing styles, and incredible self-expression through clothing. After the restraint of the 50s and the beginning of liberation in the 60s, the 70s was the decade when fashion finally threw off its shackles and breathed its full weight. It was a time when style was not dictated by rigid rules, but was born on the streets, at music festivals, on college campuses, and in discos. Denim suits. Full denim looks, often referred to ironically as the Canadian tuxedo, were incredibly popular in the 70s and lost any hint of the simplicity of workwear. Jackets and pants made of denim, matched in tone or contrasting in color and texture, were worn everywhere. To concerts, parties, walks, travels, even to some bars and clubs. It was a true symbol of freedom, informality, youth, and the easy, rebellious spirit of the decade, denying strict costumes and officialism. Denim was comfortable, durable, easy to clean, although back then they didn't care much about cleanliness. They rather appreciated scuffing, and was perfect for everyday active life. Pants, of course, were flared, and jackets, fitted, often with wide collars. It was considered a special chic to decorate a denim suit or its elements independently. Embroidery, flowers, abstract patterns, patches with the symbols of favorite rock bands, pacifist signs, slogans, pins, and sometimes hand-painted with paints. Such costume became an expression of deep individuality and creative approach to fashion. It united people regardless of age and social status, blurring the boundaries between classes. The rustle of thick denim when walking, the feel of its texture on the body, the way it sat up after many washes, acquiring unique scuffs and fading. All this was part of the sensual experience of wearing a denim suit. The denim fashions of the 70s laid the groundwork for the widespread popularity of denim in the future and showed that the work material could be the basis for a stylish and expressive look. Bell-bottoms or flares. The wide-leg pants known as bell-bottoms, or simply flares, were perhaps the most iconic and recognizable fashion signature of the 70s. This silhouette dominated the closets of both men and women. The pants were narrow at the hips and knees and then widened sharply at the ankle, resembling a bell. The width of the flats varied from moderate to extreme, elephant bells, which could cover the shoe almost completely. They conveyed the spirit of looseness, liberty, and ease that was so valued in that era. They looked especially spectacular in motion, dancing with every step and, of course, at discos under the light of strobe lights and disco balls, where their movement became part of the dance. They were sewn from a variety of materials: classic denim, soft corduroy, which was incredibly popular, dense cotton, wool, and for evening outings, from polyester, vinyl, even silk or fabrics with sequins. They were often worn with bright, tight-fitting shirts, short tops, turtlenecks, voluminous sweaters. Flats visually lengthened legs, especially in combination with platform shoes, and made the silhouette more expressive and dynamic. Rustling or rustling of fabric, especially synthetic when walking, was a characteristic sound. This style came to symbolize the rejection of conservative forms and the desire for freedom and self-expression through exaggerated theatrical silhouettes. Bright psychedelic print shirts. After the calm patterns of previous decades, the 70s exploded with a riot of color and shape. Vibrant psychedelic prints began to adorn shirts and blouses, instantly grabbing attention. Abstract, fascinating patterns resembling mirages or kaleidoscopes, swirls, spirals, geometric chaos, stylized flowers, fractal designs, pop art motifs. The imagination of designers, and often just street artists using the tie-dye technique, was boundless. Psychedelics was closely linked to hippie culture, experimentation with consciousness, and the desire for freedom of self-expression and expansion of perceptual boundaries. Such shirts and blouses, often made of light synthetic materials, polyester, nylon, or thin cotton and viscose, allowed you to stand out from the crowd, to declare your unconventionality and show your involvement in the counterculture or just love for bright colors and unusual shapes. Bright, often acidic colors created a festive, cheerful mood in any environment. These shirts were especially popular at music festivals. Woodstock was a prime example. concerts, and parties. They were worn by men and women, often open over a plain t-shirt, tucked into flats or worn loosely with miniskirts or shorts. The feel of the smooth, sometimes slightly shiny fabric on the body and the visual richness of the pattern made these shirts a true work of art to wear. Miniskirts. The miniskirt, which appeared in the mid-60s as a symbol of women's emancipation and sexual revolution, continued to be an important element of the closet in the 70s, although its shapes and materials changed slightly. In the 70s, miniskirts made of more earthy materials became popular. Denim, suede, corduroy, dense cotton, and leather. The shapes varied from classic trapeze A silhouette to straighter and tighter models. The short length, well above the knee, still symbolized freedom, courage, and willingness to show your legs. Miniskirts in the 70s were often combined with high boots, platform boots, thick colored tights, gaiters, bright blouses with puffy sleeves, tight turtlenecks, knitted sweaters, or leather jackets. It was a thing that allowed you to feel both daring, feminine, and incredibly stylish. Miniskirt became a kind of manifesto of self-confidence and independence, a way to declare your youth and energy without resorting to long, closed silhouettes. The rustle of the fabric when moving and the feeling of open legs in the wind were part of the sensation of wearing a miniskirt. Leather jackets. Natural leather in the 70s was firmly associated with rock and roll. Black leather was the most popular choice, but there were also jackets in brown, burgundy, or even colored shades. They were worn over brightly colored t-shirts with prints, blouses, dresses, creating an interesting contrast between the femininity of the dress and the roughness of the jacket. Leather jackets were practical. They protected from wind and a little rain, and served for years, only getting better from scuffs and history of wear. The smell of genuine leather, the sound of zippers jingling, and the squeak of the material when you moved were part of the experience. The leather jacket was a symbol of independence, strength of mind, and belonging to the world of music and freedom. Platform shoes. High platform shoes are another iconic fashion symbol of the 70s that cannot be forgotten. Platforms were worn by absolutely everyone, men and women, regardless of the style they favored. They added height, sometimes up to 10-15 centimeters, and visually elongated the silhouette, making the legs infinite, especially in combination with flats. Platforms were very diverse, solid the entire length of the sole, only under the front of the foot in the form of a wedge. They were made of wood, cork, plastic, covered with leather, corduroy, fabric. The top of the shoe could be anything: sandals with straps, loafers, lace-up shoes, boots bottoms, clogs. Platform shoes were ideal for discos where you wanted to look taller, slimmer, and stand out from the crowd. Their bulkiness and height attracted attention. They were part of the overall brightness, extravagance, and a certain theatricality of the era. Walking on high platforms required some skill, and sometimes it was not safe. The rumbling sound of platforms clacking on the sidewalk or dance floor was a recognizable sound of the 70s. Platform shoes became a symbol of nightlife, disco culture, and the desire for exaggeration in epithetic fashion. Printed t-shirts, simple cotton t-shirts decorated with bright designs, slogans, quotes, emblems, or band images were ubiquitous in the 70s and became one of the first mass-produced tools for personalizing everyday style and expressing one's identity. They were affordable, convenient, and allowed you to quickly and without words tell about your hobbies, views, mood, political stance, or musical preferences. T-shirts with the image or logo of favorite rock bands were especially popular. From classics like the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, to new stars like Queen, Kiss, or Eagles. T-shirts with humorous inscriptions, peace symbols, anti-war slogans, logos of sports teams, universities, cartoon or comic book characters were also popular. The printed t-shirt was a canonical way to make a statement. They were worn with jeans, especially flats, shorts, skirts, combined with jackets and vests. The feeling of soft, often a little stretched cotton and slightly rough print was very familiar. T-shirts with prints were one of the first steps towards democratizing fashion. Cargo pants. It was perfect for active living, traveling, hiking, music festivals. Cargo pants were suitable for active life and looked manly, brutal, or feminine, sloppy and stylish in combination with a softer top. These pants were especially popular among young people, tourists, students, and those who preferred functionality to external tinsel. The feel of thick, sturdy fabric and the flip-flop of full pockets when walking were characteristic. Subsequently, the cargo style became a classic and returned to fashion many times. Corduroy jackets, soft, cozy, and tactile corduroy, was at the height of fashion in the 70s as an alternative to classic wool or tweed, adding a casual look. Corduroy jackets were worn by both men and women. They could be classic cut, fitted, double-breasted, or casual, similar to jackets. The color of corduroy was most often rich, deep, burgundy, dark green, brown, dark blue, mustard. The soft rib texture of corduroy gave the look an intellectual, slightly bohemian or academic look, but without being too strict. Such jackets were often worn over turtlenecks, thin-knitted sweaters, classic shirts, especially with wide collars, and combined with jeans, often corduroy but of a different color or shade, corduroy or wool pants. They were often chosen by musicians, especially folk and rock musicians, artists, writers, students, teachers, people of creative and intellectual professions. Corduroy jackets became one of the unofficial symbols of university fashion and the style of the intellectual rebel. The feeling of soft, warm material was very cozy. Maxi dresses were often associated with the Back to Nature movement, environmentalism, and love of freedom. They were worn barefoot at music festivals, extending the spirit of Woodstock, with simple flat-soled sandals, leather lace-up boots, or even wooden clogs. The loose fit made it feel as comfortable and natural as possible without restricting movement. The rustle of the lightweight fabric when walking was part of the experience. Such dresses radiated peace, love, romance, and the desire for harmony with oneself and the world around. Despite the connection to hippie culture, more elegant versions of maxi dresses were also used for evening outings. Silk scarves, brightly colored, often with intricate prints, scarves made of natural silk or high-quality synthetic material, such as polyester, were a stylish and versatile accessory in the 70s. They were worn in different ways, and each way spoke to a different style. A scarf could be worn around the neck by tying it in a simple knot, bow, or wrapped several times. It could be tied around the head like a bandana or turban, which was especially popular. Adorned with a hairstyle tied on the handle of a bag, used instead of a belt on jeans, or even worn on the wrist. It was an easy way to add a bright accent of color, an interesting pattern or texture to a look. Scarves were often chosen to create a bohemian, artistic, elegant, or vintage style. Patterns could range from geometric, abstract, floral, ethnic, animalistic motifs. The feeling of smooth, cool fabric on the skin was very pleasant. Scarves emphasized individuality and good taste of the owner and became a trademark of many urban fashionistas and fashionistas. They allowed to easily transform even the simplest image, adding to its sophistication or, on the contrary, playfulness. Fringe on clothing and accessories, this dynamic and tactilely pleasing decorative element, was a real hit in the 70s. It adorned jackets, especially leather and suede, vests, skirts, dresses, bags, boots, and was even used as jewelry. This element came from American Indian culture and Western style, but in the 70s it was reinterpreted and became a symbol of freedom, movement, ease, and connection with natural, earthy materials. The fringe made of leather, suede, fabric, or even threads looked incredibly spectacular in motion. It swayed when walking, danced in the wind, and of course made a sensation on the dance floor. It was worn by both men and women. Often things with fringe were combined with jeans, flats, boots, Cossack, or just high. Leather jackets creating a cowboy chic or hippie Western look. The slight rustle of the fringe with every movement was part of the experience. The fringe added to the free spirit and adventurous atmosphere, making you feel a little wild and free, like you had just escaped from the prairie or a rock festival. Oversized glasses in the 70s went from being a necessary accessory to a full-fledged, very noticeable fashion element that made an image. Large, sometimes huge glasses with thick, massive frames became a real hit. Shapes of frames were diverse. Large round lenses, square, octagonal, butterflies. Materials, dense plastic, acetate, often bright colors, red, blue, green, orange, tortoise color or translucent, as well as thick metal. The lenses could be simply tinted. Gradient lenses were very popular, or colored. Glasses were worn not only for protection from the sun, but also in the cloudy weather, indoors in the evening. They were part of the image. The bigger the frame, the more stylish and fashionable the image was considered to be. Glasses became an integral part of both everyday and club fashion, helping to create the image of a confident, mysterious, or artistic person. They could completely change a person's facial expression, adding drama or playfulness. The feeling of the weight of the solid frame on the bridge of the nose and the way they sat on the face was a distinctive. Solid-rimmed glasses were a striking accent that said, "I'm not afraid to be conspicuous. I have style and I follow trends." Leggings or stirrup pants, elastic leg wear, the forerunners of leggings in the 80s, started to make a big comeback in the late 70s, especially in the context of disco culture and the growing popularity of dance and aerobics. Initially, they could be just knit pants, but gradually models made of more elastic materials. Cotton with lycra, nylon, polyester appeared. They were tight, emphasized the figure, and provided comfort and freedom of movement. In the late 70s, bright, even neon variants began to appear, as well as models with metallic shine, which were especially popular at discos where you wanted to shine and attract attention. There were also stirrup pants with an elastic loop that was placed on the foot to keep the pant leg from riding up. This was especially useful for sports or with boots. Loose pants were worn with long t-shirts, tunics, oversized sweaters, or short dresses. The feeling of tight, stretchy fabric on the legs that stretched and did not constrain movement was new and very pleasant. Leggings became a symbol of dynamic, active, and daring young people, ready to dance all night long. Chunky knit sweaters. Knit sweaters with a coarse, textured knit were an essential part of the closet in the 70s, especially during the cooler seasons. They were warm, cozy, and created a feeling of comfort and home warmth. They were often worn in layered looks, over classic shirts with wide collars, turtlenecks, or thin-knitted sweaters. Sweaters were decorated with various patterns: cable knit, Aran knit, geometric patterns, stripes, as well as Norwegian patterns with snowflakes and reindeer, which were popular in those years. Large hand-knitted models were especially valued, in keeping with the trend for handmade and naturalness characteristic of the counterculture. Sweaters could be both tight and loose in an oversized style. Colors ranged from natural, earthy tones, beige, brown, cream, to bright, saturated 70s colors, orange, green, blue. The feeling of soft, voluminous yarn on the body, its warmth and coziness, all this made such a sweater an ideal choice for autumn and winter days. Coarse knit sweaters emphasize simplicity, naturalness, and the desire for comfort in clothing. Polo shirts. Polo shirts are short collar shirts with a few buttons that became a fashionable and versatile choice for everyday wear in the 70s, symbolizing a neater, sportier, and a bit conservative, in a good way, style. They combined sportiness, originally tennis and polo wear, with casual elegance. Polos were sewn from cotton, often with a peak knit that gave the fabric a distinctive texture. They were worn by both men and women and were popular across age groups. Polos went well with jeans, especially straight or moderately flared, shorts, often short or knee-length, and light pants, chinos. They were worn tucked into pants or skirt, or loose, sometimes with the collar up, which was considered particularly cool. A variety of color, from classic white, blue, black, to bright shades of the 70s, allowed you to choose a model for any mood. Polo shirts became a universal closet item, allowing you to look neat and stylish without much effort, symbolizing the more restrained, but still comfortable and modern side of 70s fashion. Bomber jackets, lightweight zipper jackets with elastic on the waistband and cuffs, rib knit. Bomber jackets became a real hit in the 70s and an integral part of street fashion. Initially, it was part of the flight uniform of American pilots, hence the name bomber. But in the 70s, bomber jackets were adapted for everyday wear and became popular among young people due to their comfort and sporty look. They were made of a variety of materials: nylon, often with glitter, polyester, cotton, as well as leather or suede for more stylish, inexpensive versions. The colors were diverse: classic green, blue, black, as well as bright shades. Afghan vests. Afghan vests were one of the most striking and distinctive elements of hippie and bohemian fashion of the 70s. These vests, often made of natural materials, wool, suede, cotton, or their imitations, were brought from travels in the East, Afghanistan, India, Pakistan, or bought in ethnic markets and small stores specializing in goods from these countries. Their main feature was the abundance of decoration, bright, intricate hand embroidery, often in floral or geometric patterns, decorations of beads, sequins, pieces of mirrors, as on Indian clothes, as well as fur trim, sheepskin, sometimes artificial, on the edges, collar, and armholes. Knitted Afghan vests were also popular, often using bright, multicolored yarns and intricate patterns. These vests were worn over simple cotton t-shirts, turtlenecks, blouses, or long, flowing maxi dresses. They gave the image a strong ethnic touch, a sense of freedom, creativity, closeness to nature, and belonging to a world culture that transcended Western standards. Afghan vests were valued for their uniqueness, unique handmade work. Almost every vest was one of a kind. In history, they were brought from faraway, mysterious countries. The smell of wool, leather, and perhaps oriental spices, the tactile sensations of embroidery and fur, the sound of tinkling sequins or beads, all this made the Afghan vest not just a garment, but an object with a soul. It became a fashionable element among hippies, creative youth, students, and everyone who wanted to add exoticism, romance, and a sense of freedom from conventional rules to their image. White socks with sneakers. This combination, which today may seem mundane or even slightly old-fashioned, became a true symbol of sports fashion, youth culture, and active lifestyle in the 70s. White socks, often thick, cotton, with an elastic band that allowed them to be worn highly stretched, up to the middle of the calf or higher, were worn in combination with sneakers or sneakers. Sneakers in the 70s ceased to be shoes only for sports and became part of everyday life, especially among young people. Classic white sneakers, e.g., Converse, Chuck Taylor, Adidas Stan Smith, Nike Cortez, or bright-colored models were worn everywhere. The combination of high white socks and sneakers was very common, especially in summertime with short shorts, running, denim, or sports shorts. This look was simple, clean, and emphasized being active, sporty, even if you were just walking, and belonging to a youthful, informal culture. The feeling of soft cotton on the feet, the snow-white color of the socks standing out against the background of shoes and tan legs. All this created a certain visual accent. White socks with sneakers became a trendy element in a simple, functional, sporty style that was easily adapted for everyday life. This trend, which started in the 70s, continued into the 80s, becoming even more pronounced. Fair Isle sweaters, vests, Scottish Fair Isle patterns, named after one of the Shetland Islands, with their characteristic geometric patterns consisting of repeating rows of color, became very popular in the 70s, especially in knitwear. Sweaters, vests, cardigans. Fair Isle patterned sweaters and vests were worn by men and women, often over shirts, with wide collars, of course, or turtlenecks combined with jeans, flats, corduroy pants, or wool skirts. They were perfect for creating an image in the style of country, preppy, in a more relaxed version, or just for a cozy, warm winter image. The softness and warmth of the wool or acrylic yarn, the tactile feel of the pattern, all made these sweaters a favorite during the cold season. Fair Isle patterns gave the garments a handmade feel, even if it was machine-made, and a connection to tradition while still being a fashionable and relevant closet item. Jumpsuits. In addition to denim, jumpsuits were incredibly popular in the 70s in a variety of fabrics. Cotton, polyester, viscose, corduroy, even silk and lurex for evening outings. The jumpsuit was a single piece of clothing, combining top and bottom, often with a tight or fitted top and wide flares at the bottom. It was comfortable, stylish, and created a very modern, dynamic silhouette. Jumpsuits were worn by both men, especially in disco culture, often in shiny or brightly colored fabrics, and women. They could be casual, made of cotton or denim, or very dressy, made of shiny fabrics with decorations, deep necklines. The feeling of a single piece of fabric on your body that moved with you was unique. The jumpsuit was a bold choice that immediately made you stand out from the crowd and spoke of your sense of style and willingness to experiment. Tunics, long, loose blouses or shirts, often asymmetrically cut, worn over pants, especially flats, or leggings. Tunics came from Oriental fashion and fit in well with the 70s trend for ethnic motifs, layering, and loose silhouettes. They were sewn from light, flowing fabrics, often with bright prints, embroidery, or decorations. Tunics created a relaxed bohemian look and were very comfortable. Clogs, wooden shoes with solid wooden soles and leather or corduroy uppers. Clogs came from the work shoes of the Scandinavian countries, but in the 70s became very fashionable and comfortable shoes. They were stable, despite the thick sole, and perfectly combined with jeans, especially flats, skirts, and dresses. The rumbling sound of clogs clomping on the floor or asphalt was easily recognizable. They gave the look a bit of an earthy European or hippie aesthetic. Headbands, wide or thin cloth headbands, were very popular, especially among girls with long hair. They were worn to keep hair out of the face, as part of a sporty look for aerobics or tennis, or as a hippie or boho fashion accessory. Headbands could be solid-colored, printed, knitted, embroidered, or beaded. Natural and ethnic jewelry, inspired by hippie culture and ethnic motifs. Jewelry made of natural materials was popular in the 70s. Wooden beads and bracelets, jewelry made of beads and feathers, especially earrings and pendants, leather laces with pendants made of stones or wood, bracelets made of thread, fetiches. These ornaments were part of an image that symbolized closeness to nature, handwork, and the rejection of expensive, bourgeois jewelry. Sunglasses with colored lenses, tinted sunglasses. In addition to massive frames, sunglasses with lenses of different colors, pink, blue, yellow, orange, were popular in the 70s. Such lenses not only protected from the sun, but also changed the color perception of the world, adding to its psychedelic. Often the frames of such glasses were thinner, metallic. Butterfly collars, men's shirts, and sometimes women's blouses, with very wide pointed collars, often called butterfly collars, were a real hit in the 70s. These collars lay spectacularly over the lapels of a jacket or simply stood out if the shirt was worn without it. They added a certain theatricality and disco chic to the look. These are the incredible things we wore in the 70s, and each one of them spoke of freedom, creativity, rebellion, the desire for self-expression, and the spirit of its time. Fashion was a way to express yourself, show your uniqueness, your musical identity, your views and live life to the fullest. The 70s left behind a rich legacy and still inspire designers and fashionistas around the world. What are your favorite looks from the 70s? Which of the above would you like to try on today? Be sure to write about it in the comments. Let's get nostalgic together. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and press the bell so you don't miss new stories from the past. See you on your next trip down the memory lane.